Welcome, folks, to the Week 7 edition of Cover 1 Football Weekly. I'm one of your two hosts for this episode, Anthony Prohaska, joined this week by Mr. Kendall Mursky. Kendall, before we even get into Week 7 and the games we're going to cover, the players, the notes, the takeaways, scheme, structure, X's and O's, all that stuff, I think first we need to say, we're not joined by Mr. Russell Brown tonight because he is coaching his son's team in their playoff game tonight. We wish him the best of luck. We will be hearing about their performance after this game. Big game for him to a team they lost to, I believe, earlier in the regular season. Yeah. So this is a big moment for him. That's why he's not joining us tonight. I hope I didn't make that too dramatic. I hope everyone was like, "Oh, well, I mean, Russ?" And I'm like,
they lost earlier in the season. It's pretty dramatic. You got to get that comeback, that even the series.
That is true. This is a big moment for their team. I wanted to kind of just make a whole bunch of jokes of like, yeah, this is a team that's really had their number all these past years, and like apparently like ownership is really pissed about it, and like the GM's going to get fired, but nonetheless, that's where Russ is. So he's out for this evening. Instead, you folks have myself and Kendall. And Kendall, we got some games to dive into this evening, a bunch of good games in the 4 o'clock window, the late window, a couple takeaways from the 1 o'clock, and then, of course, our player of the week, rookie of the week, drive of the week series, which, again, is our favorite piece, and I'm sure we'll dive into some aspects as well. I kind of wanted to start with a general question for you at this point right now. If we're looking at the NFC, who in the NFC is a good football team to you?
It's really hard.
It is.
None of them have shown consistency, nor have any of them met preseason expectations. I don't think any of them. There's only one that's surpassing them, and that's the Eagles.
But if I had to put my... Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, you look at the Eagles, and it's still kind of like, what's their significant win right now? Like, they've beat the Vikings, right? But what's the Vikings' significant win? Like, is that the Packers? And like, is the Packers even a significant win anymore? Like, there's just a lot going on in the
Once
NFC.
you go down that rabbit hole, it's like, yeah, but they beat
this team. It's like you just start creating caveats left and right, and it's just you're never actually landing on anything. If I had to like really narrow it down, and we're gonna probably get into this with one of the teams, but Eagles and 49ers, I think those are the two that I keep coming back to. Just loads of talent, good coaching, things, just bunch of playmakers, like guys able to play above the scheme, but also scheme like elevating bad players. So it's just, I think those are the teams that stand to have the best chance to make it out of the NFC or just represent the NFC in the championship game. But it's murky right now, man. The NFC is weird, but you could also project that towards the entire NFL. And it's like, wow, there are a lot of teams that fell short of expectations this year. That's and fair. A bunch of really bad teams in terms of expectations that have overperformed. There's not a lot of that. Like, I don't know. There are a lot of mediocre teams this year, a lot of teams like falling in the middle, but I think those are the teams that people felt were going to be good this year. And they're just kind of somewhere around 500, and you kind of just have to wait to see if it plays out that way.
A lot of oddities going on so far. Yeah, like teams that have underperformed, teams that are overperforming and going above those expectations, teams that are just kind of in the middle because of that parity piece. Like there's so much of it. And, you mentioned the San Francisco 49ers. That's where we're going to start on this episode, with the San Francisco 49ers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Niners are my other team in the NFC that I think can make noise in the NFC. And I know we're saying that off of the heels of what looks like an ugly loss at home to the Kansas City Chiefs. But a lot of it for me is what, again, and this is a caveat for them, if they are healthy, and I also think once Christian McCaffrey gets, acclimated more into the system, but this is a team, even in this game, Charvarius Ward just came back from injury. Jimmy Ward just came back from injury. Neither of those guys are really 100%. And Jimmy Ward's also playing with a cast on his left hand that makes his hand like pretty useless. And it's a weird looking cast too. And then Nick Bosa just comes back. He's not 100%. Eric Armstead is out. Greenlaw goes down in this game. Hufanga goes out for a little bit and comes back. This is this marks he went down for a bit and came back. He's had some concussion issues and things. Their offensive line has been banged up. Kittle's been banged up to start this year. They've got all these like inconsistencies and injuries all over the place. Al-Shaair wasn't able to play in this game. He's banged up. If they can get back to some semblance of health. It doesn't.
I was going to say, it doesn't have to be 100%. Let's say 90%.
Just that's exactly it. I was going to say, I was literally going to say, just give me 85 to 90. Like the problem is they have injuries in terms of both quantity and in terms of quality. Like they've got injuries across the board. And then the guys that are also hurt are also good football players and important football players. And I mean, one that I don't even mention because he's done for the year. Emmanuel Mosley is fantastic. Tears his ACL, done for the year. Like there's so many pieces that make this Niners defense good that are banged up. And we saw a lot of that exploited today against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's that other team for me in the NFC. But nonetheless, we focus on this game and who these two teams are. Oh, the Chiefs come away with, I don't want to say an important victory for them, but I think somewhat of a needed one. You know, they lose to the Bills last week. They go to the West Coast. Yep, bounce back on the West Coast against a team that, you know, was I don't want to say feeling themselves, but the crowd was super amped up for this game because it's the Chiefs and because Christian McCaffrey's debut, was on the graphic for this episode. He looked pretty good, although in like a limited sample size with it being his first game and everything. But I think a lot of what you saw with this game, my biggest takeaway as we start to dive into this, you saw in this game where if the 49ers can't play good defense and then stay on top of you with the run game, you really see the limitations of this offense, because this offense with Jimmy G, I guess with Trey Lance, it was built more to push the ball downfield, but you just don't see that push the ball downfield aspect to this offense. Everything is, and similar in a way that we knock the Packers for being more of just a horizontal offense. The Niners are also built into that mold a little bit. The difference is when you live in that horizontal world and your weapons are Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, it kind of works because all you have to do is get the ball in their hands. And now McCaffrey, who we'll talk about that piece as we start to move forward here. But you saw the limitations of the San Francisco 49ers offensively in this game, and then their defense just being banged up. I'm very interested to see what the numbers look like from a coverage perspective. We saw what the Bills did last week against the Chiefs, switching up, and they were the league leader in zone coming in, and then they switched up and went heavy man in that game, along with a lot of combo coverages. I'm interested to see what the numbers look like coming out of this one, because it seemed the Niners mix and matched a little bit, but they got gashed in zone a bunch. The Chiefs come away with a big victory. If you're sitting here, major takeaways, and on the Chiefs side, is it on the Niners side? What are you sitting at with this game after the Chiefs go into San Francisco and get a win?
I mean, it's tough to say major takeaways at this point, but I do think that the offense and what they want to do in terms of game script, just it has to be different, but it's also magnified when you're playing a team like the Chiefs and you have to be uber efficient all the time. And that's kind of what it came down to in this game. Red zone percentage is at 50%. When they visit the red zone 4 times, you only get 2 touchdowns. And you get some field goals. Don't get me wrong. Points, you need points to beat the Chiefs, but you also need 6 over 3 most times.
Can't turn the ball over in the red zone.
Exactly.
Even just special teams.
It all stacks.
They're starting out with poor field position. They're giving up good field position to Pacheco on these returns. Like, you can't have any of that when you've already started out in the negative.
So that's kind of where my head goes. That, and like even third down conversions, they were I think 4 of 9 at some point in the third quarter, and I mean it hasn't gotten any better. They're still stuck at 23 points right now and
that was after they started out 1 of 5. Like they got a little better as the game went on.
And it's still not great. So I think from an efficiency standpoint, like I said, it gets magnified against the Chiefs when you have to be super effective and make sure that they don't get the ball. And while they don't have the ball, you're putting points on the board. So it all kind of snowballs into this really big issue. But it does come back to this root of the idea of what is this offense and what is it going to be? If you're going to play this time of possession type of offense, everything has to be on schedule, hit your back foot in the drop, get the ball out on time, have everyone, communicating on the same wavelength in terms of, where do I sit in this zone? Where do I go if it's man? Where do I go with this leverage? All of these kind of things, everything kind of has to be right. And it's a little like that conversation we have with Matt Ryan. I don't want to put it at that level because I don't think Jimmy G is at that level. I think he can create more than that. And I think there's more to him than just, back foot, get it, gone. That's the play. I think there is more to his game than that. But I do think that is kind of the idea of this offense in a nutshell. And you have to be efficient with that. And like you said earlier, when you have these weapons, it makes it pretty easy. So really it does come down to, for the rest of the season, obviously this defense has to play better. They're not going to play the Chiefs every single week. I'd like to think they're going to play better.
They have to get healthier first for me. And then I think if they get healthier, they will get better.
And they've played well, like really well all year, really, outside
even with a lot of the injuries they've had too. Yeah.
So it's really tough to knock them in terms of defense. But if the defense plays well, at least what they're used to, and like you said, injuries, getting more healthy, and then just Jimmy G facilitating. If he can facilitate on schedule, we talked about the weapons: Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. All he has to do is get the ball to them in space. This offense will thrive because they can all make a man miss. At least the first man miss. You never know about the second or third. The house is always an option once any of those guys have the ball in their hands. So to me, that's kind of the big takeaway with this team. It is, if you want to possess the ball as long as you do, you want to be this run, ground and pound team with, some quick timing plays, but, get some yards after the catch. You have to convert on third downs. You have to get yourself in favorable third downs, but you also have to turn into 6 every single time you get into the red zone. Not every single time, but maximize. You need to get 6 as many times as possible and make the most out of the time you're bleeding off the clock and taking away from the other team.
Yeah, and that, all of that ties into, something that you and I both said on Twitter and on different shows and episodes that we've done. When you don't have that mobile quarterback, when you have more of the game manager or staying in the pocket type of quarterback, tying into your Matt Ryan point, so many things have to go right for you. Like, you have to stay on schedule with your protection, with your timing, with your dropbacks, with your reads, with your progression. Everybody has to see the same thing at the same time. And that ties into the bigger picture for this game for the 49ers, because again, like they didn't stay ahead of schedule at all when it came to, especially like high leverage situations. You're going into the red zone, you're turning the ball over, you're not succeeding on third down.
Yeah, like getting down the field was fine, and then you hit that certain point, and it's
you can't live in that world. You can't gash the Chiefs up and down the field, and then you get into the red zone and you settle for 3, and then you get in the red zone and settle for 3. They had an opportunity to come out on that first drive and go up 7-0, and they have to settle for 3. And then they get the ball back. They get an interception, a beautiful interception. Gibson jumps it, pops into the air. Hufanga picks it, and it's 10-0. And then you give up a touchdown. And then you have the chance to answer again, and you're driving, and then you settle for 3, and it's 13-7. And then out of nowhere, it's 14-13 because you've had 3 scores, and 2 of them were field goals. And the Chiefs have had 2 scores, and they're ahead of you because they got touchdowns both times. That situational piece of football can doom the 49ers in this year because of how they're built offensively through Jimmy Garoppolo. And it's so funny to speak like negatively of him because this is a quarterback who has been to the Super Bowl and an NFC championship. And I've said this a million times this year. If Jaquiski Tartt intercepts that pass in the fourth quarter with like 4 minutes left, the San Francisco 49ers, I hate to do they probably go to the Super Bowl against the Cincinnati Bengals. And Jimmy G is a 2-time Super Bowl appearing quarterback. There's just a decent amount of negatives that come with his game. And then you add in, okay, so what do you just have to do? The scheme has to be sound. The concepts have to be sound. And then you have to protect him. They did not protect him today. Mike McGlinchey returned today after being banged up a bit. He had a very rough day, especially against Carlos Dunlap. But pretty much anybody they put on his side, they flexed out Chris Jones to line up against McGlinchey on certain third downs, and he just got the edge and bull rushed him on several snaps. Trent Williams had a couple holding calls today. He's missed time. He's been banged up. I'm very interested to see what the Niners can be moving forward in terms of health. I think they will get better as they get healthier. They have one of, if not the best assistant coaches in all of football in DeMeco Ryans, and also one of the best defensive minds in DeMeco Ryans. I trust a Shanahan-led offense with what he's able to scheme up and design. And again, like you mentioned, you hit on so many of the weapons that they have. They have a lot of potential. I'm interested to see what they become as they get healthier. And then that incorporation of Christian McCaffrey, you saw it even a little bit today, like, he's a difference maker when he gets the ball in his hands. And somebody who Jimmy Garoppolo is more in that game managing type of mold as a quarterback. You know what's really nice for a game managing quarterback? Just option routes out of the backfield. Exactly. Dump it off to Christian McCaffrey, especially with they love to run boots and nakeds and all this stuff. It's really nice if you're leaking McCaffrey out and Jimmy G can just turn and all he has to do is read like, okay.
Yeah, put McCaffrey hipped off a tackle, pretend he's chipping, but it's really a beneath route behind the line of scrimmage on the boot.
And he's wide or lead him in that backfield and do one of those like the front side type of nakeds. And if that defender green lights down, okay, cool. Let me just dump it to McCaffrey and let him make some plays after. Like if you now have another explosive piece in the mold of a, create after the catch guy like Deebo Samuel, like Brandon Ayuk, like George Kittle, and now you have it in Christian McCaffrey. You've got it at all levels of this offense. I think that piece starts to insulate Jimmy Garoppolo a little more, and it also continues to make his job easier. Similar in a way to, not to knock Jalen Hurts, but what the Eagles have done with him on offense in Philadelphia. Like you have a tremendous offensive line. You have AJ Brown. You have Devonta Smith. You've got Dallas Goedert. You've got Miles Sanders. Even Boston Scott can move. Kenneth Gainwell's got some juice. Just get the ball in these playmakers' hands. We're going to run RPOs and, make life easy for you. That Niners level it's different, but it's in the same semblance where, okay, we're just going to run the ball successfully. We're going to go play action, get the ball into the playmakers' hands, and let them make plays. I still think this is a team that, as we move forward, will have a shot to come out of the NFC. It's just a matter of incorporating McCaffrey, getting healthier. But I do like what McCaffrey adds, even though, again, it was small sample size today. He just got traded midweek. He tried to get the playbook on the plane so he could learn a little bit more, but he's not fully incorporated into this offense. And then you still a backfield that has Kyle Juszczyk and Christian McCaffrey lined up at the same time is a really cool backfield from a chess piece perspective. I think this is a team.
Literally anything.
Really he can. This is the team that I think will still kind of make noise. I know that's rough to say after they just got housed in their own building. And I feel like people tuning in like now or even post being like, what? But I think as things start to balance out as we go forward.
I mean, we've said crazier things. We said the Jaguars were going to win the AFC South. So here we are.
I still think the Jags are like the best team in the AFC South.
I mean, they keep finding ways to lose at this point.
I don't think that's I want to say this. So I still think the Jags are the best team in the AFC South. I don't know if that's a pro for the Jags or just a con for the
It's a con for the South.
The fact that the Tannehill got hurt in that game today, and with one leg still beat the Colts. Like, I just don't know what this entire division is like. And
it's down bad.
It really is. And the Jags, to your point, like they keep finding ways to lose. And then the way the game ended today, Trevor Lawrence completes it to Christian Kirk at the end. You saw that?
Yep.
It just completes it down to the 1 yard line, but he gets tackled as time stops, and that's how they lose.
You do just about everything you can do. Pretty solid 1 minute drive with no timeouts. Just can't get it done down.
Things just keep going wrong. But, with that division, I don't think it's crazy still to sit. I think the Jags, sit there at 2-5 now. It wouldn't surprise me if they somehow won this division because the Titans only have 2 losses, but they're not like a really good football team. They're not hitting on all cylinders. They've got warts. I have no idea what the Colts are. But yeah, you just have to see. No one knows. But I think we'll see. I think things will come out in the wash with the 49ers as we move forward. And then the Chiefs, I think this is a team, we've talked about them so much on this show and on Twitter and the variety of other shows that we appear on for this network. I think the Chiefs are who we know what they are at this point. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, if they can get some yards after catch and get some explosives from Juju and Mecole Hardman. We saw MVS get a deep shot today against Charvarius Ward. That was also a huge piece for me. Charvarius Ward had a terrible game. Like, I think Charvarius Ward forgot that he now plays for the Niners and not the Chiefs. He got whooped in one-on-ones, in zone. Like, he was brought in to be a one-on-one guy in quarters or in man coverage, and he failed at almost everywhere, whether it was Kelsey, whether it was that deep shot on 3rd down. It was like 3rd and 16 or whatever against MVS. They're in quarters. He sits flat-footed, and MVS just runs right by him. It's not even double move. He just runs straight by Ward. Ward had a very bad game. But this Chiefs team, they're going to go and make noise as much as Patrick Mahomes allows them to, and Andy Reid. It's interesting to see the incorporation of more Isaiah Pacheco into this offense. But then CEH had a nice touchdown run today that was a very scheme-driven with the jet motion, moves the second level. He scoops around. this Chiefs team is a good football team. They're going to be around until the end of the year, until someone takes them out. And I think the big thing with it, and you saw it in this Niners game, the Chiefs don't really beat themselves. You have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to take the game from the Kansas City Chiefs.
You almost have to force them to make the mistakes. That's kind of the thing. You have to take the game from them, but you have to make them make mistakes. You can't allow them.
Yes, which to me is in that same boat of you're taking it. Like it's not, oh, they botched this play. No, you have to make them botch this play. You have to actively. They don't give those. You won't get those like passive turnovers from the Chiefs. You have to make a great play and pick. Like Kyrie Elam's interception last week. He made a play on the ball.
Like not a great decision from Mahomes. Obviously, there was pressure in his face, but still had to take a defensive play on the front end in terms of pass rush and a defensive play in the secondary to actually haul in that contested catch. So yeah, that's the thing. They're never gonna make it easy. And I do like the point with Pacheco. I do honestly think that they're gonna start to, I don't want to say pivot, but slowly shift to add a little bit more running into their offense. Obviously, we talk about the impact of two high shells pre-snap and how that can open things up in the run game. And I think they're going to try and keep defenses guessing and make defenses honor that run game a little bit more. And I think Isaiah Pacheco is kind of, that chess piece to kind of turn that dial a little bit, make defenses respect that, hopefully open things up for guys like Juju, Hardman, and Kelsey.
That's a big worry for me as a Bills fan, but as like
a worry for the NFL.
Correct. But as like, that's what I was going to say, like as a neutral football analyst, if the Chiefs can get some running game going against these light boxes, good Lord, watch out. Because even
they have the O-line to do it too.
Correct. Their O-line is fantastic in theory. And we saw it even in this Niners game today, like this banged up Niners team, especially early on, even when the Chiefs were putting up points, they weren't running well against these light box looks. They were getting shut down. If the Chiefs start to get that going a little bit, I think, to your point, I am skewing more towards Pacheco. I think adding more juice to the backfield allows an easier time of potentially hitting these runs. You don't have to hold your blocks as long when you have a guy who runs a 4-2 back there and just is ready to get north and south. Also, he's kind of built like a mini Tonka truck. Like he's cut and he's thick.
He's
like
built.
Pacheco's, he's a bit of a little mini horse.
Fast, but he runs physical. He's not trying to make you miss with wiggle. He's trying to get the yards that are there and then run through you with.
He almost runs like speed to power, like a speed to power edge.
That's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does.
And that sucks as a
as a linebacker, as a safety.
That's what I'm saying. Like the dudes I always hated to tackle, like the fast dudes that were more the finesse dudes, I was like, that's cool. Like I can take these.
Yeah, because they're going to break down and try and get lateral once they get towards you. The guys that want to go through you, they're going to bruise you for 4 quarters. And obviously the Chiefs, they're never going to ride a running back for 4 quarters. But if you lean into it just a little bit more, if it means leaning off of CEH, 3 more touches and putting those 3 onto Pacheco, I think it could do something for this offense.
And again, he's that kind of guy who you just need like the old proverbial, like give him a little sliver of daylight and he can take it to the house in a hurry. And when you add that to an offense quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes and that has Travis Kelsey and that still has a good offensive line. And, I know they lost last week to the Bills, but Juju isn't terrible and MVS isn't terrible. And Mecole Hardman has some juice in his game. All of a sudden it becomes another chess piece weapon. And if you add somebody with speed to the Chiefs offense that is a potential walking house call, who knows what you can be. But good win for the Chiefs. Unfortunate loss for the 49ers. Very interested to see what they become. The 49ers, that is, as we move forward. I think we know what the Kansas City Chiefs are, and this is going to be a team that is in the upper tier of the NFL, not just the AFC, and we'll see what they are going forward. Sticking with this conversation in the NFC, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose horribly to the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, 21-3, to a Panthers team that is like kind of having a fire sale, but kind of not. They are in complete disarray. Robbie Anderson is cussing out coaches and then getting traded. They trade Christian McCaffrey. I don't want to say
seemingly everyone's on the trade block.
Yeah.
According to Twitter, like literally their entire roster. Literally everyone.
Apparently their teams are offering 2 firsts for Brian Burns, but they're saying no. Like PJ Walker starts today. And the Bucs are coming off of an ugly loss last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers that they should have, in theory, won. They lose today. And the NFC, the Souths are terrible. The AFC South and the NFC South. Everybody's just, holy hell. Like, I kind of want to just combine
holy grail of bad football.
Dude, I want to combine both of them and just make like an 8-team round robin tournament to decide like one winner, just to see like what kind of
and the winner will be 500 record.
It would be rough. I actually hope it would be the Falcons because their offense kind of pleases me in a strange way. But a horrible loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They sit now at 3-4 again after losing. So you take their last 3, they get a ton of points put on them in their own house by the Chiefs and don't really show up well in that game. And now you got these back-to-back losses against the Steelers in Pittsburgh and against the Panthers in Carolina, 2 teams that the Steelers came off of a game getting destroyed by the Bills. The Panthers are in disarray like we talked about. And the Bucs lose to both of them. They sit there at 3-4. What's wrong with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Dude, honestly, though, like the way you set up that with the context, I almost start to wonder if it's just a mental thing and just like everything that's looming on this team and even looming on Tom Brady himself. I honestly wonder if it's a mental thing, just simple, really oversimplification of looking over your opponents, just being like, okay, these guys just absolutely got shellacked this week. I think we got them. We're a better team. Just overlooking them flat out. And you have to wake up mid-game. I don't want to sit here and say that's all the problems because I know it's not. I know there's way more than that. But I think there is something to be said about what's going on with Tom Brady off the field, bringing it into the organization and then having to week deal with that and him be the leader of your team. I do think it's taking a toll on this team and Tom himself. But from an on the field perspective, I'm going to bring it up back towards the Matt Ryan conversation of what has to be right on offense when you can't move around in the pocket as much. And we know what happened at the very beginning of the season with the Bucs O-line with those injuries and retirements. You know, you lose guys like that. You lose a lot of trust. You lose a lot of chemistry amongst those 5 guys in the front. And we know what Tom Brady's game is. Yes, he can maneuver around the pocket. Like he's pretty savvy when it comes to that. He knows how to slip around and find openings, but he, especially in this game, had a tough time like sliding around, making shuffling throws. He was very inaccurate when he wasn't really planted like a statue, which we haven't really seen. I don't want to say that's something we've seen trending over the years. Like that was something I thought was kind of
we're used to seeing him step up and then it's a completion. He was stepping up in this game and it was like dirt. And like he's just trying to complete like and we're not talking like 15 yards or intermediate throws. We're talking like
it's everywhere.
8-yard hitch. Yes, he's just
it's underneath, it's intermediate, it's deep. Yeah, the inaccuracies because of the pressure was very, very apparent today. And I think when we talk about the Matt Ryan comparison and the idea of everything has to be right when you're a pocket passer, I think when you talk about it with Matt Ryan and the Colts, you talk about it from a 2-pronged perspective. You know, the pass protection has to be good. You have to make sure that Matt doesn't get pressured, because if he gets pressured, he has to move off his spot. And can he even move off his spot? And the flow chart ends there. And then, you go to the wide receiver side. If he is protected, then are his guys even getting separation? We know what's been going on with the Colts wide receivers. You know, Pittman was kind of injured a little bit. He's fine now and he's making plays, but Alec Pierce was injured. He's not necessarily a natural separator, but he's a big guy and he'll separate at the catch point and has a little bit of that in him, but he's a rookie. He's got to grow with it. And then Paris Campbell, who's obviously still growing amongst all of his injuries early on in his career. So there's not a lot of like trusted separation with the Colts and their everything needs to be right kind of play style in terms of that pocket passer. When you project it to the Bucs, it kind of starts and ends with pass protection because you know they have the playmakers, they have the wide receivers who can separate, who can make life easier for Tom Brady, sit in windows, leverage those 2 defenders and make that bubble as big as it can possibly be for Tom to throw into. It really just comes back to, is that O-line protecting for him? And we saw Tom Brady chew them out last week about not giving him enough time. And that's the thing. It's tough, but that's what it's like now in the NFL. Like O-linemen, they're expected to block for like 3 seconds. And then from that, it's on the quarterback, you know, because if you're asking your guys to hold for more than 3 seconds, you're literally going to get a holding call. It's just, it's not something that's very realistic or sustainable in this league anymore with the way that people are so athletic on the defensive side of the ball and what we're seeing on defensive lines now. So I think that's a big issue with them, and the fact that they kind of have to mitigate that by going to quick game stuff. And we saw so much quick screens. Like I remember watching maybe a drive and a half of the Bucs on offense, and it was like 7 screen plays in a row. Like it's what they have to do so he can get the ball out on time, on schedule, and you don't even have to get to the off schedule portion of the offense because it gets murky at that point because we kind of know what Tom is. Yeah, he's amazing, but he's amazing on schedule at this point. If you have to get him off schedule, there's a little bit of shaky play that comes with it.
So much of Brady's first year with Tampa Bay, and they go to the Super Bowl and they win it. So much of, and I'm not saying this just to like try and like downplay like Tom Brady, but they have these great weapons with Evans and Chris Godwin, and they trade for Gronk. And that's like the sexy part, right? And then Leonard Fournette, and it's like, okay, like look at all these weapons. But the big piece was the offensive line. Donovan Smith and Jensen and Marpet. They draft Tristan Wirfs, who becomes like one of the best right tackles in football in his rookie year. Yes. And then they run that group back again the next year. Again, they lose last year, but they had a really
still a great season.
line.
Yeah.
Yes. Still a great season. And the game they still almost won in that divisional round against the Rams. They almost come back. But you go into this year and Ryan Jensen gets hurt and gets put on IR. Ali Marpet retires. You trade for Shaq Mason, which was a great pick. But the offensive line play has been inconsistent. Smith has been banged up, and he's missed some time. Luke Gadecki, the rookie, has not been consistent. You got Robert Hainsey at center, who, no disrespect to him, is not Ryan Jensen. You've had inconsistent line play. And for a team that this is a Bruce Arians offense still, even though Bruce Arians is no longer the head coach and it is like a consulting role where he's still there every day. They want to attack downfield. This is a run the ball, play action, vertical shot type of offense. That's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to live in. That's what Brady likes to live in, and that's what Bruce Arians likes to live in. And you can't do that if you can't pass protect, because if you're trying to get down the field vertically, you need to hold on to the ball longer. And if you have to hold on to the ball longer, you have to pass protect longer. And the Buccaneers offensive line has not succeeded in that regard. We also saw today, Brady takes a deep shot. Mike Evans is wide open.
Right at the beginning of the game, too. Like, talk about a tone setter.
Exactly. And I think things just kind of spiraled a little bit downhill from there. Then Evans gets banged up. This is part of it, too, right? Evans gets banged up. He's playing, I don't know what percentage, but definitely not 100% as the game goes along. His foot or his calf is messed up. Chris Godwin has been banged up so much of this year. He's so important to this team because they like to run 11 personnel, and because he's in that power slot type of mold, he functions as a blocker in that run game. He's been banged up, and even when he's been in, he hasn't been 100%. So the offensive line play is a huge one for me. If we're looking at this offense, the bigger one is their running game. So if you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, these last 3 years with Brady being in Tampa Bay, in 2020, their rushing DVOA, they were 10th. Last year, their rushing DVOA, they were 5th. This year, 2022, rushing DVOA for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are 30th. They are one of the worst run teams in the entire NFL. The only teams behind them are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Indianapolis Colts, two offenses that have been completely one-dimensional, completely predictable, and it's showing in their run game numbers. Then another piece is their red zone numbers. So red zone DVOA, if you're looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're 21st in red zone DVOA this year. So once again, not good. But their red zone rushing DVOA, just from a run perspective, they're 30th once again. So they're 15th for the pass and 30th when it comes to the run. Overall, 21st in the red zone. Last year, their red zone DVOA, their red zone offense, they were first in red zone DVOA, second for the pass, and 9th in the run. And then if you go back to 2020, their Super Bowl year, they were 5th in red zone DVOA, 10th for the pass, 3rd for the run. Their run game has massively fallen down. Also, another fun stat, if you want to look at their red zone carries. Oh, this is so brutal. Their red zone runs. Guess what their yards per attempt are for red zone runs. Hold on, I'm gonna remove quarterbacks because I don't want to function in any of that.
For red zone runs
for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yards per attempt,
2.5,
0.8 in the red zone.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Running back runs in the red zone for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this is directly off of SIS, a site that you are well familiar with. They've got They have, where's the attempt? They got 15 red zone attempts for running back carries, 0.8 yards per attempt. They also have a broken tackle plus missed tackle percentage of 0. They've broken 0
it's just
tackles.
Not happening.
It's just not happening. Also, one last little fun fact: percentage of runs where the running back is hit at the line of scrimmage in the red zone, 53.3%, which is the 7th most. Also, if you want to dive into more, stuff percentage. So stuff runs are runs that get 0 yards or less, according to SIS. 33.3%. That's the 10th most. Their run game, and how many times have we seen it for years? Going back to the New England Patriots, right? Yeah. What does Brady love to do? Under center, play action, turn his back, come back, tight end over the middle, or an in-breaker, some kind of something over the middle of the field where he takes advantage of that play action. It ain't working this year because the run isn't working this year, and he's not getting protected. My 2 big things that are wrong with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm interested to see as they get healthier going forward, if it starts to change a little bit, their offensive line isn't protecting Tom Brady, and they cannot run the football. And the run game, this is such a piece that people never, I don't say never, but don't connect enough to Tom Brady, because it's always like, Tom Brady's amazing. Tom Brady's amazing. Look what he's doing at 43 years old. Amazing, amazing. He's always, when he's been successful, he's always had a very good offensive line, and he's always had a good run game. And you're not seeing either of those things this year. And connecting to our earlier point with Jimmy G, connecting to our larger point with Matt Ryan, if you have a statue at quarterback, you can win, but everything has to work. The protection, the timing, the rhythm of the routes. You can't get jammed at the offensive line, or at the wide receiver position off the line. The quarterback has to be able to hit his drop. He has to see what the receivers are seeing. So many things have to line up, and those things aren't lining up. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have legitimate deficiencies. And there was the one today. I think they just run a crack toss on 4th and 1, and they lose half a yard to the Panthers. Like, the Panthers just crash. One of their linebackers scrapes, gets off a block, makes the tackle, gets the ball back for the Panthers, stopped on downs. 3 points in Carolina on a season where the offense has been inconsistent, and I think a lot of it stems from their lack of success on the ground and their inability to run the football, their lack of protection from the offensive line and inconsistency on the offensive line, and then also how both of those things are extending into the red zone. Also, another red zone piece, just for anyone, they're 21st in the NFL in red zone touchdown percentage at 50%. That number is going to go down once today's numbers are factored in, because they failed multiple trips here in Carolina. You're just seeing things that people usually don't see with Tom Brady offenses. A poor offensive line, lack of a run game, and it's really limiting this team as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I really wonder what this game would have looked like, the overall complexion and outcome, if they didn't go for it on some 4th downs early in the game in the red zone. They just took the 3 points. I wonder if that would have changed some play calling, some overall execution, how they decided to attack this game, and if the game script was just different. Because let's face it, it's the Panthers. Are you really crazed for a touchdown over 3 points here? Why are we not just taking whatever points we can get and hoping we can stop them on defense? But hindsight bias, of course, but it still kind of begs the question, did we need to go for it on these downs?
And their defense has been banged up a little bit. Injuries in the secondary abound, and they've had some inconsistent play, but they played fine defensively overall. I know it's not going to look like that considering they gave up like 21 points to a PJ Walker-led Panthers team, but it was really just they gave up big plays. They gave up a 60-yard run to Deonta Foreman, and then on the next play, Devin White tries to overcompensate for that run, and Chuba Hubbard just literally takes one step and gashes it for like a 20-something yard touchdown run, or like a 17-yard touchdown. DJ Moore has a terrific touchdown catch in the back of the end zone.
Great throw on that one.
Really great throw. And DJ Moore, taps his feet in the back of the end zone. That's a really great catch, but a high degree of difficulty throw. I think you more tip your cap to PJ Walker and DJ Moore. And then it's just a blown coverage on the Tommy Tremble touchdown.
Yep.
So you're seeing some inconsistencies, but it's not enough to put the shoulder of the burden of this blame onto the Bucs defense. I think it's really just stemming from this offense. Like, putting up
21 points. 21 points is what they gave up. Like, the Bucs offense should be able to score more than 21 points.
And you scored 3 in Carolina after scoring 18 in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh against a team that had No Minkah Fitzpatrick. I'm not even going to go through the whole thing. Like 6 of their starters on defense were out. They were gashed. I'm also pissed because I got eliminated in my survivor pool because I picked Tampa. Like, that should have been cake. And you know what? If I hadn't gotten eliminated, I can't imagine how many people this week would have been like, oh, I'll pick the Bucs to beat the Panthers because the Panthers are in disarray.
Right.
Tampa Bay is just – maybe Brady's just super bitter and he knows that people are picking them for survivor pools and he's just mad and he's tanking.
Oh, yeah, that's it. It's petty.
Could be that. That could be that. Maybe that's why what he was telling to the offensive line. He was like, listen, we're going to keep screwing up on purpose.
My buddy has me picked in Survivor, and he's losing.
And I hate him. So I'm making sure he loses his $50 buy-in. So we're tanking this game. Yeah, not great for the Buccaneers. And I think the bigger thing with it is how much does that improve going forward? Because at this point, not that every team in the middle of October is who they're not necessarily in their final form.
No, everyone's evolving.
Yes, but a lot of these problems are personnel and scheme based, and it's hard to fix both of those things. Yeah. Given you can't really tweak what you have other than hoping some of your injured players get healthier and hoping some of, the guys who have been out return. So I think there is some potential, light on the horizon, but they need to fix their red zone, the offensive line protection, and the run game. And they need a bye week. They do need a bye week. They do need a bye week. And I really want to know what Tom Brady is yelling to his offensive lineman because he is mad.
Yeah, he's not happy.
He's not happy. Other people that aren't happy. Fans of the Los Angeles Chargers. So all 2 fans of the Los Angeles Chargers are probably super pissed at this result. Actually, we got to stop real quick because Chris jumps in. And Chris says, don't forget to hit the like button, everyone.
Chris.
Please hit that like. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for being here and joining us, Chris. And also thank you for encouraging people to hit that like button. Sometimes it's corny if we just shill out for the like directly for ourselves, but it's nice when other people do. And then we can bring that comment up.
And then we can say, oh, that guy's smart.
Correctly. Be like Chris. Everybody hit that like button. But seriously, it helps us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So please hit that like. I'm going to pull up this comment now because one's a super chat. We have to. And it's two-pronged. 1, thank you very much for being here. 2, thank you very much for the super chat. 3, we're going to answer this question. 4, the username is the tree and the icon is a tree. And I just want to know, is it inspired by this?
I'm treeception.
I'm digging it. I like that. Well played. I'm digging the graphic. I'm digging the username. For those of you listening on the audio only, the graphic is just a picture of like a Christmas tree, like a non-decorated tree, but like a fir tree that you would see out in the woods that you chop down for Christmas. This is fantastic. But the comment says the 49ers defense isn't close to Buffalo's, right? I think if the 49ers defense is healthy, completely healthy, I think they can give the Bills defense a run for their money from a scheme perspective and a schematic perspective. I mean, again, when healthy, they have one of the best edge rushers in football. They have one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of football in Eric Armstead. They have arguably the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL in Fred Warner.
And good guys next to him.
Yes, and good guys. Greenlaw is fantastic. Al-Shaair is fantastic. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football in DeMeco Ryans. And then they've got fun players at a variety, even like Ebukem and at edge. They have a lot of good players and a good rotation. When healthy, I think they're up there in the conversation with the Buffalo Bills. Right now, I think the bigger problem is they're not healthy, and you're seeing performances like this today. And I think that's the bigger thing. If we're going to look at it, if we're comparing them to the Bills, I think the Bills' depth on defense is better than the 49ers. Like if we're talking just both units are healthy and we're talking starters versus starters, I think you can make a conversation, especially with the schemes that they use and the coordinators. But when the injuries start to happen, I think the Bills are built more to kind of tread water and mitigate those losses than the 49ers are. What are your thoughts? Also, the tree says it's not inspired. It's by me, the tree. So fair enough. Good answer.
It's me.
That's fair.
I think isn't close is too harsh. I think that's really where I'm going to stand on this. I think the 49ers defense is good. I don't think they're as good as Buffalo's, but I think isn't close is just too harsh and too sternly put. I think really the difference with these two defenses, and it's always kind of been my opinion with the 49ers defense, I think that they're a great defense, but I think they're lacking a little bit of talent in the secondary, and I think sometimes they have to overcome that, and they have to kind of mitigate that with just great play from the front seven, which they usually get. But if they don't, then you can kind of see that back end get fleshed out. So that's kind of where I see the difference between the two defenses. I see the Bills secondary, well, guess not right now, but in the past as more of a strength. And then, San Francisco kind of being the antithesis to that. So both great defenses, but right now, I mean, Buffalo's just kind of leaps and bounds better than just about every defense in the league.
Yeah, I don't want to get that comparison game but especially coming on. I think recency bias also creeps in. Like you see what one team did, and it's like, well, they have to be better than this other team.
Literally same opponent. The chain rule starts to get into effect.
That's fair. I think I think a huge piece for the Niners is how injury. And that's something that's really been like their last 3 years. They just always get banged up. Like all their guys.
Oh, it's been more than 3 years, man. It's wild. It's something in the water. It's the training staff. It's something.
It's so weird. Like, and it's quantity and it's quality. Like everybody who's important seems to go down. They can never keep a running back healthy. Like their line gets hurt. Their quarterbacks get hurt. Everybody. It's just like a rotating cast of injuries, which is unfortunate for them. But yeah, I think that's well said. I think isn't close is too harsh. I think when healthy, this is a very good defense in San Francisco. Unfortunately, they weren't healthy. And unfortunately, they got smacked today. Oh, good question from Chris. He says, guys, what's happened to Detroit's offense? Is it just them missing Swift? I think it's two things. I think one, they've come back down to earth a little bit, and you're seeing some of Jared Goff's limitations. Two, I think no DeAndre Swift and no Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's been out the last couple of weeks. He got concussed today, and he missed some time today. I think you're starting to see the limitations of Goff combined with missing two very good players on this offense. And very good questions from the chat. Appreciate you folks. And thank you very much for the super chat from
I'm upset with Detroit. They had that game. I
thought of like the interception down there, the fumble and the turnover down there. But then I also thought of when Noah Brown fumbled earlier in the game. And I was like, well, that kind of balances out a little bit. But they could have beaten the Cowboys today. They could have. It's unfortunate for them. You know who else could have had it? The Los Angeles Chargers and your boy, Justin Herbert.
Only mine.
Only yours. No one else. No one else in the entire world likes Justin Herbert. It is just you. I want that made known.
I mean, most fantasy owners are probably pretty upset right now.
I would imagine. And again, all two Chargers fans are probably super pissed. The Seahawks don't have to travel too far west. They get to stay on the West Coast. They go to LA. And they put a good whooping a little bit on the Chargers here. Final score 37-23, a game that took a very long time to finish and complete. But this was a game really that it finishes 37-23, but it was 37-16 at one point. It never really seemed like the Chargers were in it in this game. No. J.C. Jackson goes down with injury, and Chris knows. He says no one else picks Herbert over Allen. At least Chris knows. Chris knows what you said and what you.
Hey, I was wrong. I was wrong. All right.
Chris knows. The Chargers just. Let's look at this game in a vacuum. Seahawks win 37-23. They're now 4-3. Chargers lose 37-23. They are now 4-3. What do you focus on in this game? Are you taking away things for the Seattle Seahawks, who are really a fun story this year with how Geno Smith is playing? Penny goes down, but Kenneth Walker looks good. Abraham Lucas, third-round rookie offensive tackle, looks really good. You're pairing him with Charles Cross. Yes, like they've got some fun pieces. Jamal Adams goes down, but they're playing good enough defense. Tariq Woolen has, 3 or 4 interceptions? You're starting to see some things click a little bit. Are you focused on how the Seahawks are kind of rising and playing? This ties into a conversation we had earlier in this episode. The Seahawks are one of those teams playing above expectations.
Yep.
The Chargers are one of those teams that are playing below. What are you focused on within this game?
Specifically on the Chargers, my biggest focus is just what's happened to this O-line, and especially losing Rashawn Slater. And I really think that's been a big impact on what the
Chargers
for a
group that already wasn't tremendously strong. Their O-line wasn't a position of strength.
No, they were really kind of depending on Slater being like the guy to buoy them and kind of make.
Yeah, I love how he took it. I believe I remembered an exact quote from Kendall that said, after Josh Allen, Justin Herbert is my favorite and most best QB. The most best verbiage is fantastic. Yeah, well done, Jason. Good comment. I appreciate that. For the audio people,
slanderous.
That was fantastic. Continue.
Kendall, sorry. No, that was libel. Excuse me.
That's fair.
I think a big thing though is the pressure that's getting onto Herbert, because last year I remember going through the stats. during this past offseason for how each quarterback was affected by pressure, of course, stemming from the Jerry Hughes conversation and how pressures don't matter. Justin Herbert was outstanding against pressure last season. Like, he was actually, he had better stats in terms of like touchdown to interception ratio, like completion percent, like really weird anomalistic stats when it comes to versus pressure versus being kept clean. It was outstanding from him last year. That's not sustainable. Everyone knows when you get pressured, those stats are going to drop.
Yeah.
Whatever sample size it was, like, it needs to be increased and you'll see kind of regression towards the mean. And that's what we're seeing this year. We're seeing Herbert get pressured and we're seeing it affect him. And on top of that, he's still injured. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say, like, if he's 100%, that pressure won't affect him. I think it will, maybe not as much.
But maybe he'll be able to mitigate it more if he's 100%.
Bingo. So I think losing Rashawn Slater on an offensive line that's already trying to find its identity, find cohesiveness, find the 5 guys that are the starters on this group and really are going to lift this group up. And then what they're doing in terms of the passing game, is that a mask for the offensive line, or is that what we want to do? Do we want to get the ball out quick because we know Herbert's under pressure quickly, or do we want to get the ball out quick because that's the offense? And that's what I keep wrestling with when I watch the Chargers, because we know the arm that Herbert has. We understand that defenses are going to sink back a little bit because of just honoring his arm strength, his arm talent. We understand that, but at what point are we going to start seeing defenses just come a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage because we just haven't been tested? Why would we honor this if we're not going to be tested? So it's just kind of this cat and mouse of, what is the offense? What does the offense want to be? And is it masking inefficiencies on this offensive line? Because to me, it's a whole bunch of things with the Chargers and what they plan to do on offense. I think what they're doing on defense, you can really see the impact that Khalil Mack is having. It's unfortunate that Bosa went down early in the season. Yes, we can't see those guys together. And then obviously J.C. Jackson going down today is a huge dagger to the secondary. So much like the 49ers, the Los Angeles Chargers can never stay healthy. But you wonder, like, what can this team be if they're at full strength? Because we saw it during the beginning of the season. We kind of saw them really steamrolling over teams. We saw them in control, and we saw what they can be. But you peel back some layers of the onion, and where's the depth on this team? And you kind of wonder how legit is this team past those star guys. And if you lose one star guy, how many contributions do you lose, and how meaningful is that to the impact or overall outcome of the game? So I really come back to what the offense wants to be. And I don't know what that is, because it's just impossible to evaluate with what's going on with O-line play, what's going on with Herbert's injury, and everything baked into that.
I think for me, the takeaway from this game starts with the Chargers. And I think at this point, we're seeing what the Chargers are. And I think it's middling in a lot of ways. And I think some of it is stemming from, to your point, the injuries. Like, they go out and get Khalil Mack, not just to have like a stud on the edge, but to have a stud on the edge and pair him with Joey Bosa. And then Joey Bosa goes down. You get J.C. Jackson to kind of course correct some things on your back end and pair him with Asante Samuel Jr. and Derwin James and Bryce Callahan.
He wasn't healthy to start the season. Correct. And then he comes back.
And then he's not playing well even when he's there. And then now he gets hurt and looks like he might be done for the year. The offensive line, you draft Zion Johnson because you're trying to piece that offensive line together and buoy that position. But then Rashawn Slater goes down. And then all of these positions where they're suffering injuries, they're not tremendously deep. Then you have a ton of money in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Cool, Keenan Allen goes down. And Mike Williams is able to be phased out of the game because his skill set, he's a high-end number 2. He's not built to be a number 1. Then you've got Austin Eckler, but he can't function as this guy who's getting like 50% of the touches every game for an entire offense. He's not built to live in that world.
Not to mention the distance between the nearest defender and him when he catches a football is different when Keenan Allen and all the weapons aren't on the field.
Correct. And we tie it back to, what this offense wants to be. They've never pushed it downfield with Herbert for whatever reason, even though he's got a cannon. But even by this year's standards, last year when everybody was complaining that they weren't pushing the ball downfield and it was too much quick game, his ADOT was 7.9. Coming into today, Herbert's ADOT for the year was 6.8. So they're operating even more shallow than they normally were, and which is even harder when you don't have Keenan Allen, this tremendous separator and route runner who can function in the short to intermediate levels. So they already don't have that ability to push the football downfield on offense. They've had struggles with the offensive line. They draft Zion, but then they lose arguably their best offensive lineman in Rashawn Slater. Corey Linsley, one of the best centers in football, has also missed time and hasn't been there. And then you add in what they do on the ground offensively. So from a total DVOA perspective, the Chargers offense coming into today was 12th. They are 9th in the pass, which is impressive for Herbert considering he's been playing so banged up, but then the 24th for the run. And then if you look on the defensive side of the ball, an issue that I think a lot of us thought would be better for this team this year, given what they did in the offseason. I like the Austin Johnson pickup, Sebastian Joseph Day, all of these pieces. You look at what they are on defense, also kind of middling. 14th in total DVOA for defense, 11th against the pass, 22nd against the run. This is a group that, again, made reinforcements to their starting line, but they don't have reinforcements within the depth and the functionality of this team. And I think the comparison to the 49ers is very interesting because when healthy, I think the 49ers defense is much better than the Chargers defense.
I still think the overall team is still better than the Chargers if both are healthy. But
I would agree. I would pair that as well. The way the Niners are constructed and what they have, but both are similar in that regard of they're very top heavy, and you can live in that world. But if all of a sudden, if that top starts to fall off a little bit, what do? When J.C. Jackson goes down, okay, now you're playing Michael Davis at your outside corner spot. And, okay, Joey Bosa goes down. All your money is tied up into Bosa and Mack. You let Uchenna Nwosu bounce to Seattle, ironically, because you went out and you got Khalil Mack. You don't have that third guy for the rotation piece.
Right.
Rashawn Slater, you guys were already struggling at your tackle positions before Slater goes down. What else do you got? You don't have receiver depth because you got $40 million baked into Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Like, what are you doing there? So if these top guys start to go down after they've already leaned money and resources into them, you're starting to see the roster attrition start to happen and the depth is being really pressed. And then when it comes down to your quarterback, who's a stud, who you put the handcuffs on. Nate Tice said it the best when I had him on Disguised Coverage last week. He said the Chargers offense is, under Joe Lombardi, is like a guy having a Ferrari and doing 60 in a 65. Like just limiting what that vehicle can do. And then also Herbert's been banged up. So I think I think this Chargers team still potentially could take one from the Kansas City Chiefs later in this year in Kansas City. Maybe. I think they have enough talent, especially as they start to get healthier, to maybe get into the playoffs, but I think they will. Slater is scheduled potentially to come back at the end of the year, as is Joey Bosa. We'll see if they can tread water until then. We'll see if Herbert gets a little healthier.
Steal some wins.
They got to steal some wins, but this team's in trouble. They've got holes and vulnerabilities, and I think they're starting to show. And on the flip side of the ball, the Seattle Seahawks are just making everything that they can out of what they got. I love that Pop's giving us a shout out saying that Walker is as good as you guys said he was. Yes, he was. Was he your RB1? He was my RB1. Was he yours as well, or did you have Brees?
I didn't have Brees.
Oh, you had Isaiah Spiller.
I did. That was it.
Chargers running back who's been a little banged up this year. Yeah, Kenneth Walker had a day again today. If we're looking into the box score stats, which I have them pulled up right here. I think you had Walker at 2, maybe Brees at 2. Kenneth Walker today, 23 carries, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a 74-yard tutty. A little banged up to start the year, but then he comes back. Unfortunately, Rashad Penny goes down, which absolutely sucks. He goes down. Kenneth Walker and DJ Dallas are a fine combo, mainly because they're able to lean on Walker a little bit. Like we mentioned earlier, they're getting contributions from multiple rookies. Charles Cross is starting to progress a little bit, but Abraham Lucas is the real rookie offensive lineman story.
He's mauling. It's just absolutely mauling dudes.
Playing so good. He's sound in pass protection. He's going up against guys who are capable. Yes. If you go, Brandon Thorne had an awesome Twitter thread on Lucas going one-on-one against Cam Jordan for the Saints, and Lucas just holding his own in the pass and the run. So you got a nice piece at the bookends on the tackles. You got a capable piece in Kenneth Walker. We'll see what DK Metcalf's injury looks like today, but I combine Walker and Lockett.
Yeah, and Lockett.
But Metcalf and Lockett are a cool 1-2 combo. And then again, focusing on the rookies, Charles Cross, Kenneth Walker, Abraham Lucas, Tariq Woolen, all of them creating splash plays or adding a higher floor aspect while also creating a potential higher ceiling. The Seahawks team is a fun team, and it's led by a quarterback that the majority of the league and fans wrote off in Geno Smith, and he's pissed about it, and he's letting people know about it every chance that he gets. I do not like Pete Carroll, and I don't really like the Seahawks, but this is a fun team, and it's cool to watch them succeed. And again, hearkening back to our earlier point of a team that's playing above expectations.
Yeah, that's the main thing. They're playing above expectations because of their contributing rookies and what those rookies are contributing. You just laid it out. And you didn't even mention like Kobe Bryant too. And that's the thing. It's like, has Kobe Bryant made like amazing contributions? No, but he's getting starting minutes. Basketball term. But he's getting starting snaps for this team. Is he, getting the interceptions and the eye-popping plays like Tariq Woolen is? Not necessarily, but he's contributing meaningful snaps to this team. And that's what's so wild about the Seahawks team and how they're performing both ahead of schedule and far above expectations. And I do ultimately, although we've talked about these rookies, it does come down to the quarterback, and it comes down to Geno. What Geno is doing this year is really outstanding. The ability to both play on schedule and off schedule, use his legs, use his arm, do just about everything you need that dual threat type quarterback to do, like he came out of West Virginia and the idea of him doing. It just clearly took a little bit of time for him to figure it out in terms of decision-making, patience, awareness, all of these things. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to sit back and watch some people do it in front of you and learn from their mistakes. But I mean, he looks clean, man. Like his interception today, I didn't think that was his fault. Like, I think
it was a good play by the defender. Deflected ball goes in the air, and Kenneth Murray.
I think he's just playing clean football, and there's a lot to be said about that. If you're not making mistakes, and obviously, if you're making big plays above the scheme, that's a huge bonus. But if you're not making mistakes, like I talked about last week with Daniel Jones, you're giving yourself more opportunities to score points. And what does this game come down to? Scoring more points than the opponent. So it's very, once again, oversimplification, but I think Geno has really elevated this team with his quarterback play. No one thought he would be at this level, but he's creating that dual threat that the defense has to honor. They have to hem him in the pocket in terms of making sure he doesn't scramble. They have to hem him in terms of making sure that he can't get outside the pocket to improvise. There's a lot to account for with a guy that has all of the weapons and abilities that he has.
He's had some throws this year, throughout the entire year, where he's just fitting lasers into tight windows to Lockett and Metcalf and even like Noah Fant. And I'm very impressed with how Geno Smith has played this year. I don't think this team would be 4-3 without Geno Smith. And I think that's the biggest compliment that anybody could give Geno Smith right now.
What do you think they would be?
If they had Russell Wilson still?
No, yeah, I'll do it twice. What do you think they'd be with Russell Wilson? With this O-line,
That's a fair thought. Like, because Russ is still, in theory, a better quarterback than Geno. I wonder if there's off the field. I mean, from a track record perspective, yes. At this point, right now, I don't know what the hell Russell Wilson is. I'm very confused. Like, he doesn't even seem like he can read defenses properly. The one that still I'm going to get back to is the failed overtime game against Indianapolis, where he doesn't see Hamler on the right side, where you have clear man coverage. It's single high, which everybody knows the Colts want to do, and they're clearly in man coverage. You can see that, and you don't even look to the man beater on the right. You don't even look at that game to see KJ Hamler wide open. Like, I understand if you look at it and want to come back, but that should be that once you ID that it's single high and then you can ID that it's man, your first look has to be
know
that
your
backside.
scheme. Yep.
And he's not. And I'm very confused as to what Russell Wilson is. But again, I think, in a vacuum, even within that, major kudos to Geno. It's cool to see a guy that was, again, written off and I think doubted to a degree As Pop said, the Bills drafted EJ Manuel the year that Geno got drafted. Yeah, he's been in the league a while, and he's been an afterthought, I think, for the majority of people. And there was a lot of people this year, you trade Russell Wilson, and it's like, oh, well, now the Seahawks got Drew Lock. They're going to suck. It wasn't even like it was going to be Geno's job. People thought when they brought Drew Lock, it was going to be, Drew Lock's job. And instead, Geno beats him out, gets this job, hasn't looked back. And the Seahawks are 4-3 in an NFC West where the Rams' offensive line has been terrible and it's limiting this whole team. And they're sitting there in the hole. The 49ers are banged up and they're sitting there below 500. All of a sudden, the Seattle Seahawks are first in the NFC West and have a shot at the playoffs, depending on what the Cardinals look like with the returning DeAndre Hopkins now. But that NFC West seems to be just so fun and intriguing year after year. And I think this year is no different with the Seahawks now being in first for it. I did want to pull up this question real quick from Jason. He says, there's a lot of talk of this Chargers failures being on Staley. Do you guys buy that or just really charge it to injuries and lack of depth? I'll say last year, they did not have the horses on defense to run the kind of defense that he wanted. This offseason, they revamped that, but then there's some complications with it. Like you bring in a guy like J.C. Jackson, but what is J.C. Jackson used to doing in New England? He's used to playing man coverage. He's used to doing that one double where maybe he's manned up on the number 2 receiver or he's bracketing the number 1 with the safety over the top. Now he comes into a defense that's playing more zone probably than he's ever played before. He has to do pass offs and reads and, okay, if we're playing match coverage and this guy, if he runs past 5 yards, he's mine. But if he does this, I leave him and I drop. Like it's a bit of a change in world for J.C. Jackson. You bring in Khalil Mack to fit with Joey Bosa, but then Joey Bosa goes back. So your edge position is basically what it was at last year, actually arguably even worse.
Right.
Because last year
your assessment of Mack versus Bosa.
And last year, and also, but from the depth, at least last year you had Bosa and Nwosu. Now it's just Mack and Bosa, but now Bosa's gone. So Mack and your third guy collectively is worse than Bosa and Nwosu.
Right.
And you've just had inconsistencies there. I think some of it has to be placed onto Brandon Staley's shoulders. You can't just completely exempt a coach from blame just due to injury. I do think a significant portion is injury related. I think some of the game management pieces and the criticism that gets laid at Brandon Staley's feet, I do think there's merit to those. I do think some of them are way overblown and people just like to jump on the bandwagon and give him flack for it. But I do think a significant portion is due to the injuries, but you have to look at Brandon Staley as well. I think a lot of it, my thing is more from a roster construction standpoint and a depth perspective. Like you really went top heavy and that was risky, and also scheme fit for some of the guys.
Yeah, I want to stick on the game management component. I mean, that's really the main thing where I would come back to with Staley. But I think you hit the nail on the head with, sure, there's merit. Like, I absolutely understand it. I'm one of those people who I don't agree with every single time he goes for it on 4th down or goes for the 2-point conversion. I think he's a little over aggressive in that area.
A little bit.
But I think it can be overblown. I don't think he's losing games because of that. I think he's something I've talked about in this episode, giving himself less opportunities, or in another way, losing his defense. You're literally telling your defense that you don't trust them in a lot of scenarios where it's fair. I don't want to play the field position game because I don't trust our defense to stop them. Even if that's your intention or not, if that's his thought, that's still kind of the message that's being portrayed to the defense. So I don't love it all the time, but I do definitely think it's overblown. But I mean, it still has.
If I'm looking at a coach, I'm looking at more of offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. But again, that still ties into Staley because it's not like Lombardi's running an offense that Staley is like not approving. It's not like Lombardi's calling plays and designing this offense and Staley's over there like, man, this sucks. Like, we need to change our offense, but Lombardi won't let me. Like, Staley has control over that. Yeah. So I think I lean more towards the Chargers' failures on offense and wondering what that direction is, especially as like, I don't care if you're a defensive first coach. How do you not see Justin Herbert and be like, yo, we need to let this dude loose instead of being like, no, we're just going to keep him penned in and operate with an 8 out of, what is it? Let me go back to it.
6.8, I think you
6.8. That's ridiculous.
No,
and especially given like the concepts that they're running within, their concepts are simple. It's just stick and slant flats.
It is
over
just
and over
stick.
Again. That's it. It's so frustrating. And then it's even worse when paired with an offensive line that is banged up and or not good and or can't run the football. There's just a lot of things that don't make sense. Very good question, though, Jason. I like that a lot. You know what else I like a lot, Kendall? Our favorite segment, Player of the Day, Rookie of the Day, Drive of the Day here on Cover One Football Weekly. Kendall, let's start with your player. I'm wondering how much overlap we have because I'll keep this to myself because I don't want to shade it a little bit. Player of the Day. What do you got?
I got to go with Joe Burrow. I mean, the guy had 500 total yards, and
Falcons defense sucks though.
What'd you say?
The Falcons defense sucks though.
Well,
that's why he didn't get my number one. But he was throwing, so he was.
They got AJ Terrell. They got that guy.
He got hurt and he left in the second quarter.
Did he? That's funny. He's also come back down to earth like real hard down.
He also keeps getting hurt like every game. Like he plays and then he gets hurt in the second quarter and he's out, and then he comes back the next week and he gets hurt with a different injury and leaves. Like,
wow. I did not.
Atlanta can't have nice things. They're also not using Kyle Pitts. We can't focus on him.
We can't go into
tell us why Joe Burrow is your guy of the day. Sorry.
Rabbit hole. Yeah, 500 total yards, 4 total touchdowns, 34 for 42. I believe at halftime he had 325 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 2 incompletions on 21 attempts. He was just firing on all cylinders. He got all 3 guys involved, Boyd, Higgins, and Chase. All of them were very much involved in the passing game. And I mean, he was their offense. He even added 3 rushes for 20 and 1 touchdown. He was literally the entire offense. Like we talk about as Bills fans, how much of the offensive yardage was percentage wise on Josh Allen's shoulders. And it's usually very, very high. This game, that was Joe Burrow for this game. I don't want to say that they wouldn't have won this game without him, but I mean, Mixon wasn't really all that effective.
No, Mixon had 17 carries.
End of the game.
Yeah, Mixon had 17 carries for 58 yards.
And that didn't happen until garbage time. That literally didn't happen until garbage time. So it was very much the Joe Burrow game. They leaned on Joe Burrow in that passing attack. Even when they were up multiple scores, they were like, we don't need to bleed out the clock. Let's just keep getting yards and bleeding out the clock and scoring more points. They were full attack mode, drive the ball down the field. I thought he did a really good job of understanding what the defense was giving him, but also pushing the ball down the field when he could and taking those chances when he could. So I thought he had just a fantastic game, borderline perfect game.
He did. He looked good. Mine for me, I went with Josh Jacobs. He had an absolute hell of a day, over 140 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, just carried the team in a variety of ways for this Raiders offense. And Kendall, keep rolling through with your rookie of the day and drive of the day as I have to step away really quick.
I got you, sir. So we talked about him just a little bit during the Seahawks and Chargers segment, but Mr. Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker had himself a day. He started very early off. I believe he had a 12-yard rushing touchdown, but then he kept getting the ball. Obviously, as we talked about, the Chargers really never had this game. It kind of kept slipping away from them from early in the game. So Kenneth Walker kept getting work. He was splitting carries with DJ Dallas, but he kept getting work, got up to 23 carries, 168 yards, and that long of the 74-yard touchdown to add to his first touchdown from the game. Continued to show good vision and patience in his running style. There was something when watching him at Michigan State, he was a player that kind of had to learn how to stay patient because his O-line really wasn't that great at Michigan State. So he had to learn how to wait for his blocks to develop and then hit the hole with the burst that he has. I mean, sub 4.40. He's got the speed. And if anyone saw that 74-yard rushing touchdown, you can see that burst. You can see that speed when he hits the hole. He hits it hard, but he hits it hard, but he also breaks through those arm tackles. I mean, he's got a really good understanding of when to be patient for those runs and allow those blocks to develop, but also when he has to just press the hole in zone and he has to move forward, get to that line of scrimmage, make the defense commit to one gap and then maybe cut it back to another gap, or just take the hole that's there and just be decisive and get one cut upfield. So I think he's showing and proving why the Seahawks took him as early as they did when they had the amount of running backs as they did with Penny being so good at the end of last season. I think a lot of people thought that it was a weird pick for them to make wasn't necessarily a position that they needed, but here Penny goes down and we have Kenneth Walker taking on the Lions' share of the load for the Seahawks offense and the running game. So I thought that was very solid from him. I'll move on to my drive of the week. And I got to go with the Giants' eventual game sealing 4-minute drill. I could have gone with their touchdown to put them ahead 20-17. It was like a 10 play, like 6-minute drive, but I thought it was particularly well executed of them when they got the ball with like 4 minutes and change left. They get the ball, 9 plays, 61 yards, take off 3 minutes and 25 seconds. And it ended in a field goal that forced Jacksonville to go for a touchdown drive on their next drive with only 1 minute and 7 seconds remaining and no timeouts, because the Giants ran the 4-minute drill to perfection. I thought they did it very, very well. They really leaned on Saquon for this drive. They didn't get a whole lot from Saquon in terms of explosive plays until that fourth quarter, or like late in the third towards the fourth quarter, but they really leaned on him the entire game. They know they keep leaning on Saquon. They keep giving him touches. That Giants offense is going to start churning. It's going to start getting some yards and turning into points. So they leaned on him for the 4-minute drill. They got the Giants into field goal position. First 3 plays were 3 rushes from Saquon, turned into 40 yards, gets them into field goal range, gets the Jaguars into a position where they have to use those timeouts. And of course, the Jaguars put no points on the board with that final drive. As we talked about, Christian Kirk getting stopped short at the 1-yard line. That could be baked into this whole final drive of the week for the Giants. But I mean, the Giants just keep making my drive of the week segment. I mean, week after week, they keep coming back in the fourth quarter. So it's really hard to keep them out of this, but I usually pick their game winning drive. I figured this week kind of pick the game sealing drive where they were already ahead, but they churned out the clock and they did it the old fashioned way with the 4-minute drill. So I thought they did a great job of that. But that'll be it for us this week. Anthony had to dip. He had a little bit of an emergency, so I just covered up for him on that back end for this segment. I don't know what he picked for Rookie of the Week. We didn't talk about it, but I imagine he went with Kenneth Walker, especially after that 74-yard touchdown at the end. I do wonder what his drive of the week is. But, of course, you'll get us both next week, probably at the same time. We like to go live on Sunday nights, but we obviously have life things sometimes. We'll be recording and we'll post it up on Monday or something like that. But we'll try to keep you guys in the loop if we go live next Sunday, or if we're going to have it go live on the YouTube channel on Monday or something like that. But we will definitely keep you guys in the loop. Definitely appreciate every single one of you that joined us live. Please, please, please hit the like button, comment, subscribe to the channel, whatever it is, greatly appreciated from our end. Really helps both the channel out and this individual video out. It really helps the algorithm to push it towards other fans of these teams so they can come onto the channel and see the type of content that we're making that isn't just Buffalo Bills content for all teams and all fans around the league. So please, 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 if you guys could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. And of course, want to thank you guys all again. We will be back next Sunday. I think it'll be all 3 of us, me, Anthony, and Russ. Hopefully Russ won his playoff game this week. We shall see. But thank you to everyone. That'll be it for this week on Cover One Football Weekly, and we will see you next Sunday.